Join us at Women of Courage and celebrate the achievements of women. We at the ministry decided that we're going to dedicate the next 5 or 6 shows discussing the subject of voting. Voting is one of the most important activities of your life. It is when you get a chance to determine the course of your country. It is when you get a chance to tell your fellow citizens what you think. Please go register and then vote this November. Take your ballot into the city clerk's office. Do not take your ballot to the post office. The post office is being sabotaged. Post office boxes are being removed from the neighborhood, and equipment to sort mail is being sold off. So take your ballot to the city clerk's office so it can be effectively counted. Thank you.
John Lewis's last words appeared in the New York Times today in an essay that he wrote shortly before his death, intending it to be published on the day of his funeral. Here is that essay, read for us today by John Lewis's friend and admirer, Morgan Freeman.
While my time here has now come to an end, I want you to know that in the last days and hours of my life, you inspired me. You filled me with hope about the next chapter of the great American story when you used your power to make a difference in our society. Millions of people motivated simply by human compassion laid down the burdens of division. Around the country and the world, you set aside race, class, age, language, and nationality to demand respect for human dignity. That is why I had to visit Black Lives Matter Plaza in Washington, though I was admitted to the hospital the following day. I just had to see and feel it for myself, that after many years of silent witness, the truth is still marching on. Emmett Till was my George Floyd. He was my Rayshard Brooks, Sandra Bland, and Breonna Taylor. He was 14 when he was killed, and I was only 15 years old at the time. I will never, ever forget the moment when it became so clear that he could easily have been me. In those days, fear constrained us like an imaginary prison, and troubling thoughts of potential brutality committed for no understandable reason were the bars. Though I was surrounded by 2 loving parents, plenty of brothers, sisters, and cousins, their love could not protect me from the unholy oppression waiting just outside that family circle. Unchecked, unrestrained violence and government-sanctioned terror had the power to turn a simple stroll to the store for some Skittles or an innocent morning jog down a lonesome country road into a nightmare. If we are to survive as one unified nation, we must discover what so readily takes root in our hearts that could rob Mother Emanuel Church in South Carolina of her brightest and best, shoot unwitting concert goers in Las Vegas, and choke to death the hopes and dreams of a gifted violinist like Elijah McClain. Like so many young people today, I was searching for a way out, or some might say a way in. And then I heard the voice of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on an old radio. He was talking about the philosophy and discipline of nonviolence. He said we are all complicit when we tolerate injustice. He said it is not enough to say it will get better by and by. He said each of us has a moral obligation to stand up, and speak out. When you see something that is not right, you must say something. You must do something. Democracy is not a state. It is an act, and each generation must do its part to help build what we call the beloved community. a nation and world society at peace with itself. Ordinary people with extraordinary vision can redeem the soul of America by getting in what I call good trouble, necessary trouble. Voting and participating in the democratic process are key. The vote is the most powerful nonviolent change agent you have in a democratic society. You must use it because it is not guaranteed. You can lose it. You must also study and learn the lessons of history because humanity has been involved in this soul-wrenching existential struggle for a very long time. People on every continent have stood in your shoes through decades and centuries before you. The truth does not change, and that is why the answers worked out long ago can help you find solutions to the challenges of our time. Continue to build union between movements stretching across the globe because we must put away our willingness to profit from the exploitation of others. Though I may not be here with you, I urge you to answer the highest calling of your heart and stand up for what you truly believe. In my life, I have done all I can to demonstrate that the way of peace, the way of love and nonviolence is the more excellent way. Now it is your turn to let freedom ring. When historians pick up their pens to write the story of the 21st century, let them say that it was your generation who laid down the heavy burdens of hate at last, and that peace finally triumphed over violence, aggression, and war. So I say to you, walk with the wind, brothers and sisters, and let the spirit of peace and the power of everlasting love be your guide.
John Lewis gets tonight's last word through the voice of his friend, Morgan Freeman.
Is there a book deal coming or anything like that?
I have no book deal right now in the process.
Will you today to commit to donate any further proceeds to book deals, to film reviews, to charity?
No.
Can you commit under oath that you have not and will not pursue a book or movie deal based on your experiences working for the president?
No.
That was almost a year and a half ago. It feels like a very different time when Donald Trump's infamous fixer, Michael Cohen, testified before Congress. Now, that day, Republicans were quite hard at work trying to get Cohen to promise not to write a book about Donald Trump. Cohen, of course, ignored those calls, started writing while he was in an upstate New York prison. And today, he released the foreword of his memoir titled Disloyal. In those few pages, Michael Cohen teases accusations like this, quote, Trump had colluded with the Russians, but not in the sophisticated ways imagined by his detractors. I also knew that the Mueller investigation was not a witch hunt. Trump had cheated in the election with Russian connivance, as you will discover in these pages, because doing anything, and I mean anything, to win has always been his business model and way of life. Cohen also teases a slew of other things, quote, from golden showers in a sex club in Vegas to tax fraud to deals with corrupt officials from the former Soviet Union to catch and kill conspiracies to silence Trump's clandestine lovers. I wasn't just a witness to the president's rise. I was an active and eager participant. Yikes. For more on Cohen's new revelations, I'm joined now by Natasha Bertrand. She's a national security correspondent at Politico. Natasha, good to see you. Thank you for being with us. What's your sense of what's new in this from the context of what can be new in this? In other words, what can Michael Cohen say in a book that he wasn't compelled to say to investigators?
Yeah, great question, Ali. So I think that we're probably going to see a lot of overlap in this book with Michael Cohen's testimony from February of 2019. He, of course, has been in prison for the last couple of years and is serving out the rest of his sentence in home confinement. But I think what we have to remember as we're reading through this is the lengths that the Justice Department and even the Bureau of Prisons, for that matter, apparently were willing to go to try to prevent Michael Cohen from releasing this book. He was originally sentenced to home confinement due to the coronavirus pandemic from jail. And he was ultimately brought back to prison after he refused to sign a statement saying that he would not write a book or speak to the media. That, of course, was kind of a deal breaker for Michael Cohen, and a federal judge ruled that it was clear retaliation and violated his First Amendment rights. So it's pretty remarkable how much the Trump administration doesn't want this book to come out, to the point that a judge last month said, "This is something that I've never seen in my 2 decades of being on the bench."
There's an excerpt from this that I want to read to you from the foreword, in which he says, Trump had also continued to pursue a major real estate deal in Moscow during the campaign. He attempted to insinuate himself into the world of President Vladimir Putin and his coterie of corrupt billionaire oligarchs. I know because I personally ran the deal and kept Trump and his children closely informed of all updates, even as the candidate blatantly lied to the American people, saying there is no Russian collusion. I have no dealings with Russia. There's no Russia. Is there anything in this book that is dangerous for the purposes of Michael Cohen, because he was invited to tell investigators everything he knew? In other words, is this color? Is this stuff we generally knew in greater detail? Or is there something that is so damning that it could actually have an impact on Donald Trump and either the election or his legal exposure?
Yeah, so there might have been things, for example, that members of Congress just didn't ask Michael Cohen pointedly enough, right? And in that sense, we might not have gotten the fullest picture of what Michael Cohen found out about the president, now president, in the 10 years that he was working for him for the Trump Organization. So there are certain things that Michael Cohen, simply by virtue of not having that put out into the public domain during that testimony, is able to save for his book, especially given his testimony that he recorded over a dozen or over 100 conversations over the course of his 10 years working for the president. So he has tapes, he has documents, several of which he did turn over to Congress when he testified. But the full extent of what's in his back pocket, I think, is not fully known, because he was cooperating with prosecutors and he was charged. And a lot of that came out in the court proceedings. But I do think that given that length of time that he was working for Trump, there is a lot probably that he has yet to reveal and that he's going to reveal in this book. I mean, just some of the details from this forward, things like the golden shower example in Las Vegas. I mean, that is something that has been reported in the past, but it's never been corroborated by someone who's this close to the president. And obviously it raises a whole bunch of new questions. That, and of course, things about Trump's financials that Michael Cohen could potentially reveal in his book that could be dangerous to the president. These are things that we'll be looking out for.
Well, that's still in play, because there are still investigations in New York. There are still investigations by the district attorney. There are still by the DA in New York. There are still investigations by the attorney general in New York and other investigations. So is there a possibility that Michael Cohen can be called upon to testify further on some of these issues that come up in his book?
I think it's definitely possible. Obviously, it depends on how far Congress wants to go with this. There is a possibility that they'll be able to get him to testify, perhaps from his home confinement. Prosecutors, of course, could get further cooperation from him during his confinement, subject, of course, to permission from his superiors there. So I think that there is a possibility that we could see more cooperation from Michael Cohen on this front. But if he has not yet turned over everything he already has about this to prosecutors, I would also be pretty surprised, just given what a valuable resource he has been to them in the past. It would seem surprising that he was holding anything back from them at this point. It would not seem so surprising if he was holding things back from the public.
Senator, good to see you again. I apologize. We seem to talk a lot after Donald Trump seems to drop your name into tweets. He did it again yesterday, very similar to the last time you and I talked about this, in which he addresses the tweet to suburban housewives, don't know who uses that expression, talks about low-income housing and how people are going to invade the suburbs. And then he drops your name. He says Biden would reinstall it in a bigger form with Cory Booker in charge. Now, the only thing, and you know, Senator, I've studied your background. You and I talk a lot. The only thing I can glean from this is he's just dropping your name into tweets because you're an African-American man and he thinks that might scare his voters. I don't know.
I really do think that it is something as basic as that. Let me find a black person that I could try to scare folks from the suburbs. But it's very personal to me because my backstory. I mean, the reality is 1969 when I was a baby and my parents tried to move into these amazing New Jersey suburbs, they were turned away from houses because of the color of their skin. And if it wasn't for activists, many of them white, in that community, they would send white couples out to pose as my parents after my parents were turned away to see if houses were still for sale. The house I grew up in, my father and mother were told it was sold. The white couple found out it was still for sale. On the day of the closing, the white couple didn't show up. My father did, and a volunteer lawyer named Marty Friedman. And Marty was then attacked by the real estate agent, punched him in the face, sigged a dog on my dad.
Wow.
And after all that, we finally moved into this community with some of the best public schools in New Jersey. 18 years later, I was president of my class, an All-American football player, on the honor roll, and heading off to Stanford. And I'll tell you, Donald Trump was a part of that 1960s, 70s housing discrimination. Remember, he had a major federal lawsuit against him for that kind of systematic discrimination. And so for him to try to whip up this boogeyman that people like me are scary, to try to prey upon bigotry and fear, I'm sorry, this is a very old trope that was used by generations past, and it's just not going to work in today's America. And he will lose the suburbs because there are people that are afraid there. But it's not of the fear mongering that he's doing. It's that he has failed to protect them and keep them safe in the midst of this virus. I am sad to say, as I sit here, that we in New Jersey have had so many deaths in our suburbs that were preventable if we had a president of the United States that took this virus seriously and did the things we're seeing from New Zealand to Taiwan, where they got the virus the same time we did. And places like Taiwan have about 10 deaths nationwide. And yet we have a person dying from COVID about every 80 seconds. And so his fear mongering is bigotry, sexism, racism, and won't work. But the real concerns that Americans have about their safety and well-being, the real concerns and fears we have that he's not addressing will be one of the many reasons he will lose.
The head of the Iowa Postal Workers Union has come out with pretty startling information this week, telling us that Donald Trump's new Postmaster General, Louis DeJoy, has ordered the removal of mail sorting equipment from certain post offices, at least in Iowa, perhaps even more widespread across the country, still kind of waiting to find out if this is a widespread problem or if this is just happening in Iowa. Either way, the whole purpose of what Mr. DeJoy is doing right now is to slow down the mail. In fact, the head of this union already admits that removing this equipment has resulted in a massive backlog of mail that's just sitting there. It's just sitting there. What we're seeing happen right now is the Trump administration intentionally sabotaging the post office because they don't want you to vote by mail. Folks, that's what is so insane about this. The president of the United States is forcing his hand-picked, multi-millionaire little crony Postmaster General, Louis DeJoy, to tear apart one of the most effective government programs ever because Trump is afraid he's going to lose the election. That's why we're destroying the post office. And by the way, that mail that's backing up, that's getting left behind, those are your bills. Could be your Medicare information, your Medicare card that you're waiting on so you can go to the doctor. It could be your Social Security check. That could be your EBT card, and you're waiting on that so you can go buy food for your family. It could be that college acceptance letter that your son or daughter's been waiting on, not knowing where they're going to be going. It could be anything, but it could be incredibly important. It could be a life-changing piece of mail that if you ignore it, you could lose your house. You could destroy your credit. That's how important this stuff is. We may not think about that all the time, especially with regards to the fact that Trump's only doing this because of the election, but it's not just your mail-in ballots that are getting left behind. It's checks, it's time-sensitive information, it's bills that, again, if they don't get paid, you could lose your house, you could destroy your credit and not be able to get a loan in the future. These are life-changing little envelopes. And this administration thinks it's okay to screw with your life, to let it pile up on the floor, because Trump is an insecure, terrified little brat. That's what we have in the White House right now. So they are taking out this equipment that is necessary. They have to have this in order to efficiently do their job. And Mr. DeJoy actually came out and gave a reason why they're doing this. He said, well, we got this cash shortfall. We gotta make up for it. He said, I'll just read it here. This realignment will strengthen the Postal Service by enabling us to identify new opportunities to generate revenue so that we will have additional financial resources to be able to continue to fulfill our universal service obligation to all of America. Cool. What does that have to do with removing this equipment that you already own? You're not saving money by getting rid of it. I mean, I guess you have to plug it in, so maybe you're saving a few cents every day on your power bill? Is that what it is? Because your statement here, when asked about what you're doing, doesn't add up whatsoever. Like, we're going to try to come up with new revenue streams by making the mail horrid. We know exactly what you're doing. You're not fooling anybody. You are attempting to sabotage the entire postal system here in the United States to protect your boss. You have tens of millions of dollars invested, by the way, in competitors of the post office. Mr. DeJoy does. And he's making a huge profit off of his destruction of one of the greatest institutions ever created by the United States federal government.
I am going to pause for a second to take a short break while you listen to information regarding willpower and encouragement. It is all a matter of learning new behaviors. And please remember, it is easier to build strong minds than to repair injured people. What I said is a modification of a quote by Frederick Douglass. He said, it is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. Now, this is a congratulations and a shout out to the Women of Courage show. Starting in July, we will be publishing articles in the Native Sun. The editors of both papers agreed to allow us to publish articles in their papers. In keeping with our mission, the articles will detail information regarding 4 linking subjects: reading, self-esteem, sexual abuse, and sex trafficking. To support our mission to bring you information on these subjects, we will appreciate it if you would advertise in these papers. These newspapers support us, we should support them. Give us a shout out at murderedvoices@gmail.com if you read, enjoy, and find our articles helpful. We thank you for listening and supporting our show. Our show could not have a greater audience. Don't forget to email us for dates, times, and locations for our Saturday meetings. God bless.
Making an excuse is easy. The consequences are fussy. In fact, we always find ourselves failing to achieve our goals because we succeed in making excuses. The good news is, Gloria Lee has yet another book for you. The cure you need for a change. What you need to win. The book title speaks it all. Reading its 276 pages is worth it. Be the first woman to read and inspire others. Go to touchedbythelight.us/regular-publications and get your copy now for only $14.95.
Today we are going to discuss the book series, Women of Courage. The book series comes in 3 parts. It's part 1, part 2, and then a workbook designed to help you develop yourself. I believe this book will help a lot of women determine the course of their lives. Enjoy reading.
Modern history is written on the back of women who chose not to conform. Our history books are littered with examples of powerful women like Rosa Parks, Malala Yousafzai, and the Triangle Shirtwaist factory workers. But for every tale of a woman's success and perseverance, there is a harrowing backstory of tribulation and strife. Things are better now, we say. It's not like it used to be. But turn on the news. Turn on the news in your own city. Turn on the international news. Women are suffering from the restrictive society in Saudi Arabia to your own neighborhood. It's better, but ask yourself, is it good enough? Women of Courage tells a tale of women, from the harrowing story of early women to their victorious perseverance. It tells tales that have not been told enough, examples of how women have the strength to put their foot down and map their own future. Read their stories and become better equipped to write your own story by changing your behavior and becoming a woman of courage. The Women of Courage series was written to help women learn about themselves and to turn women into winners. You do not have to settle for life prophesized by your teachers, the church, your parents, or your friends. You can change the scenarios and play the starring role. In order for women to learn to believe in themselves, to become the person they want to be, it is important for women to know where they came from. History is the standard by which we judge ourselves. If you have a good self-image, you will believe the sky is the limit. You can do anything or become anyone. But if you have a poor self-image, your thinking will be chaotic and you may never reach your goal. For centuries, women have played an important role in the development of society, yet this role has been practically ignored in folklore and in history books. Men have always had the starring role. Men have been the keepers of faith. Men have been the saviors of society. Men have been valiant, steadfast, and true, while women have been relegated to the sidelines where the peace setters were men. Today we shall put the story straight. The everyday slugfest that was carried on by ordinary women for century after century after century has never been told. Today we present a pictorial representation to give you another view of the fight conducted by women. Pay particular attention to the conditions in which the women worked and note this was a fight for survival. Why are only a few women in history books? Why are women left out of leadership positions? Why are 21st century women struggling with the same issues that 20th century women fought against? The series Women of Courage gives answers to these questions. Millions of women all over the world are living in fear, unhappy, and unfulfilled, wishing they could do more with their lives. If you are one of these women, fearful and unhappy, take the bold step and purchase the series Women of Courage. Read and learn how other women met these challenges and succeed in living fulfilling lives. Read the series Women of Courage and learn how you can change your life forever. Women of Courage is an inspirational book that seeks to tell the stories of strong women who have persevered, even when those threatened by a woman's strength have stood in the way. It's a book for all women, a book to help more of us stand up and say, it's about time. It's a book for you. Get your copy from touchedbythelight.us. If you have reached a point where you are stuck, having a sense of tiredness, coming from seeing all of your dreams and visions of success get obscured with the lack of experience, guidance, and knowledge necessary for success, learning from women of courage may be the most important thing you've read this year. Living a passionate life in a hectic and busy 21st century is getting increasingly harder. Women of Courage series will provide you with all the inspiration, courage, and role model you need to get inspired and take your life in your hands and start living as bravely, as passionate as you deserve. Most aspiring individuals end up missing a huge amount of opportunities due to the lack of training and tools that would allow you to overcome psychological barriers, limiting beliefs, fears, and lack of creativity that you could potentially face during your journey as a successful woman. This lack of proper guidance manifests itself in lowered performance and productivity and failure to unleash your full potential and show the world what you can truly do. If you lack the attitude and psychology, proper resources, or vision to make your dreams a reality, combined with dissatisfaction with the execution of your plans, but you remain firmly dedicated to making your ambitions a reality, you will certainly derive the most benefit from the incredible Women of Courage series. If you are serious about taking your life to a whole new level and enjoying the privileges of creativity, fearlessness, and success that all the brave women who have changed the world are equipped with, you are in the right place. Don't leave your future to chance. Get a new sense of strength, inspiration, and courage with Women of Courage series. You'll be so glad you did. Guaranteed. Achieve what you're after.
While we're used to counting backward now to Election Day, we're still well into primary season across the country for people running for Congress, among other things. On Tuesday, Marjorie Taylor Greene won a runoff election to become the Republican nominee in Georgia's 14th congressional district. Now, that district has been reliably red over the years, and Greene, who is a small business owner, will likely win the House seat in November. Now, here's the thing. Marjorie Taylor Greene is a racist conspiracy theorist. It's all there for people to see on social media. In her words, racist, Islamophobic, anti-Semitic views, and for good measure, she promotes a litany of right-wing QAnon conspiracies. Now, if you're not familiar with QAnon, here's a quick crash course, according to the Anti-Defamation League. QAnon followers, quote, believe world governments are being controlled by a shadowy cabal of pedophiles who will eventually be brought to justice by President Trump. And like clockwork, Trump tweeted his support for Greene after her win. At a press briefing yesterday, a reporter asked him about it, and he didn't like that too much.
You congratulated Marjorie Taylor Greene in a tweet. You called her a future Republican star. Greene has been a proponent of the QAnon conspiracy theory. She said it's something that would be worth listening to. Do you agree with her on that?
Well, she did very well in the election. She won by a lot. She was very popular. She comes from a great state, and she had a tremendous victory. So, absolutely, I did congratulate her. Please, go ahead.
Specifically on QAnon and her decision to embrace that conspiracy theory. Do you agree with her on that? That was the question.
Go ahead, please.
Greene's history of supporting QAnon is well documented. NBC News recently uncovered that she wrote dozens of articles about its theories and even served as a correspondent for a conspiracy news website. In a post from 2017, Greene, quote, wrote favorably of the QAnon conspiracy theory, suggesting that Hillary Clinton murdered her political enemies and ruminated on whether mass shootings were orchestrated to dismantle the Second Amendment. Not only does she deny elements of history that are commonly held as fact, she also has doubts about one of the most disastrous events of the 21st century.
We had witnessed 9/11, right? We had witnessed 9/11, the terrorist attack in New York, and the plane that crashed in Pennsylvania, and the so-called plane that crashed into the Pentagon. It's odd. There's never any evidence shown for a plane in the Pentagon.
the so-called plane that crashed at the Pentagon. All right, we've clearly got a problem here, but Marjorie Taylor Greene is just the tip of the iceberg. A recent internal investigation by Facebook exposed thousands of QAnon pages and groups that have millions of members and followers. And while this paradigm is, or at least was, entirely fringe, it does seem to be picking up mainstream and could present itself elsewhere on Capitol Hill. Just think of how many important bills have passed by super small margins in Congress. The 2018 Farm Bill passed by 2 votes. In 2017, the Republican-led House was able to dismantle Obamacare by 4 votes. Even just a handful of votes wields a ton of power. So visualize what can happen if some of that power is ceded to conspiracy theorists who peddle outlandish and dangerous fiction, or just plain old racism. Marjorie Taylor Greene might be the first QAnon candidate to make her way to Congress, but she probably will not be the last. Joining me now are the 2 NBC News reporters who have written extensively on this topic, my good friends Brandy Zadrozny and Ben Collins. Brandy, you and I talked about this the other night, and Ben, on Friday, I believe you published a brand new piece about this. So let's start with you, Ben. Bring us up to speed. For people who are watching this, don't really know what QAnon is, what is it?
I think a lot of people assume conspiracy theory, it couldn't be that bad, right? Maybe you watch Unsolved Mysteries or something and think like that. It's not like that. It's very dangerous stuff. There was a guy who posted on this website called 8chan, now it's called 8kun, and he claimed 3 years ago that Hillary Clinton was about to be arrested and that the deep state was activated and, the national guard was activated to take down the deep state. And there were going to be protests all throughout the country because she was about to be arrested for running a satanic child-eating cabal. That's the kind of thing we're dealing with here. It's not standard conspiracy stuff. It's really out there things, and these people are waiting for a judgment day to come. What we've realized is that people who are sort of diving down rabbit holes during the pandemic because they're nervous about job security, or they lost their job, or a loved one's sick and they want to find answers for this. QAnon supporters have taken advantage of these people and have sort of spread that group outward in that time.
Brandy, you and I have talked a lot on this show with Ben about nonsense that spreads on the internet, disinformation and misinformation. Feels to me like this falls into its own category. It's not just people retweeting or reposting misleading articles. This seems to be almost it sort of sounds to me like it borders on a belief system.
It's a cult, Allie. It's a religion. It's, these people that are like Marjorie Taylor Greene was, who are spending all of their time on the internet sort of bathing in these conspiracy theories. They have utilized social media not just to read and maybe share with their friends group, but to actually congregate together in Facebook groups, in subreddits, but in these groups to just share and be radicalized with this information all day long. Like Ben said, the pandemic has only made things worse. And so these people are just there all day. We've seen, like I reported this week, Facebook groups have grown exponentially with QAnon, and the people are becoming more radicalized. We can see it in their conversation.
I want to just read from your article, Ben, how QAnon rode the pandemic to new heights and fueled viral anti-mask phenomenon. The question I've got for you is how do people get involved in this? You wrote that while QAnon bubbled on the fringes of the internet for years, researchers and experts say it's emerged in recent months as a sort of a centralized hub for conspiracy and alternative health communities. You were saying that sort of people started off in things that seemed a lot more benign, like wellness communities, and somehow worked their way into these full-on conspiracy theories that involve eating babies and things like that.
Yeah, you might think this is a strictly far-right phenomenon. After all, in this theory, really the only rule is that Donald Trump is the only good guy. He is here to go save the world from the satanic cannibals. You would think that that is a strictly far-right phenomenon. Recently, it isn't. We saw a lot of groups who were wellness communities, people who were interested in alternative health. People would, the algorithm would sort these people together with the QAnon people. They would say, oh, alternative health, maybe they're into anti-vax. If they're anti-vax, maybe they're into Donald Trump. And within 1 or 2 clicks, people would go down these very bad paths. Now, I'm sure you've seen these videos. Every weekend, there's a new one of people trashing a Target or yelling at essential workers at the supermarket about masks and saying they're for slaves and things like that. There's an ecosystem on Facebook that rewards this. This is why it's happening. On Facebook, in QAnon communities, in these wellness communities, they are using these videos as sort of recruiting tools, saying, hey, you're not alone. That lady freaking out at Target, she is, in fact, she's speaking the truth here. So we may view this rationally. We may view this as, somebody flipping out in a store on a person making minimum wage. And that is correct. But on Facebook, there's an entirely different audience. Like, there was a woman, there are two people in this store that I saw who a month before they went and they trashed a Target like you're seeing right now, or they went to the Palm Beach County Commissioners meeting and told everyone that they're all pedophiles. A month beforehand, they weren't even Donald Trump fans. But Facebook sorted them into this group so quickly and radicalized them so fast that they determined that this was the best course of action.
So, Brandy, again, we're not seeing active disavowing from Donald Trump, as we saw he congratulated Marjorie Greene. What are we seeing from the Republican Party, from folks who really don't want this stuff interfering in their own brand?
Very little. Apparently, Ms. Greene is going to be placed on a committee. There have been one or two Republicans who've come out and said this is a dangerous ideology and we want no part of it. And those people have been quickly harassed on social media by QAnon followers who are very, very good at swarming together and harassing. And, like we said before, Ali, this is not a fringe movement anymore. Thousands of Facebook groups, millions of members. That is what we call a political base at this point. And you can see that Republicans are fine with using that to their advantage.
Thanks to both of you for your great reporting on this, and I do recommend to my viewers to follow both of you about important reporting on QAnon and conspiracy theories that are out there that could spread to relatives or people you know, and you could end up hearing them at the dinner table. Brandy Zadrozny, NBC News reporter, and Ben Collins, NBC News technology reporter. Thanks to both of you.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.
So Donald Trump and his dirty postmaster general may be trying to slow the mail, but the states are stepping up their legal attacks. Let's talk about that. And let's talk about a postal experiment we can all participate in, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So it sure looks like Donald Trump and his dirty Postmaster General Louis DeJoy are involved in a criminal conspiracy in violation of a federal law to slow mail delivery. Fortunately, there are some states that are stepping up their legal efforts to put a stop to it, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But first, an experiment. This is what I'm going to do tomorrow, Monday morning. We often ask ourselves, what can we do to get involved in the fight for our free and fair elections, to get involved in the fight against the destruction of the Postal Service being undertaken by Donald Trump and Louis DeJoy. One thing we can do is we can obviously contact our elected representatives, right? We can call them, we can email them, we can text them. And what I'm going to do tomorrow morning is all that and then some. So I'm going to call, email, and text my Congresswoman, Jennifer Wexton, and my Senators, Tim Kaine and Mark Warner. I'm going to have a conversation with them. I'm going to say, please, please take the fight to Donald Trump and Louis DeJoy, including making a criminal referral of them to the Virginia State Attorney General. And we'll talk more about that in a minute, because that is what is beginning to happen, and it's good news. So I'm going to ask my elected representatives, please take the fight to Trump and DeJoy and try to save our Postal Service and our free and fair elections. And I'm going to say one more thing. After we hang up, I'm going to send you a letter. This one is addressed to Representative Jennifer Wexton, my Congresswoman. I have two more, one for Senator Kaine and one for Senator Warner. I'm going to document this phone call we had, and then I'm going to put this in the mail to you. And can I please ask you a favor? Can you have your staff just give me a call, send me an email, let me know the day you receive it? Because that way I can document the delay. I can document how long it took for this letter to travel the 10 miles from my house to the office of Jennifer Wexton. And that is a small but concrete way that we're going to be able to show how Trump and DeJoy are slowing, if not destroying, mail service. If that makes sense to you, that little experiment, if it resonates with you, maybe you want to give it a try as well. If it really resonates with you, maybe you want to blast it out on your social media platforms and urge others to do the same so we can concretely document the destruction of the post office. If we can do it in the hundreds, in the thousands, in the millions, then we've got ourselves a pretty good experiment there. But let me turn back to what Donald Trump and Louis DeJoy are actually doing. Because to this old 30-year prosecutor, it sure looks like a conspiracy to violate the federal law by slowing mail delivery. Yes, there's a federal law for that. And for those of you scoring at home, it is 18 United States Code 1703, 18 USC 1703. No, there will not be a test at the end of this video. But the title of 18 USC 1703 is Delay or Destruction of Mail or Newspapers. And here's how it reads in pertinent part. If a Postal Service officer or employee destroys or delays any mail entrusted to him, he shall be fined and imprisoned for not more than 5 years. Well, Postmaster General Louis DeJoy has all mail entrusted to him, and he is wrongfully, nefariously, I contend unlawfully, delaying delivery of that mail because Donald Trump is trying to interfere in our right to a free and fair election. That presents so much more evidence than you need to open a criminal investigation, to open an investigation in the grand jury. That's what I would be doing if I were still a prosecutor and had jurisdiction over this crime. Will Bill Barr, the one responsible for initiating that investigation of this crime that we see unfolding before our eyes, will Bill Barr open an investigation? No, not into Donald Trump or his Postmaster General or any cabinet member. Of course not. Because Bill Barr doesn't care about his obligation to represent the interests of the American people. Bill Barr doesn't care about supporting and defending the Constitution of the United States. Bill Barr cares about protecting Donald Trump's back. I was going to say something else. So Bill Barr will let this crime go uninvestigated and unprosecuted until January, that is. And then we'll hopefully have a law-abiding president and a law-enforcing attorney general, and this and every other crime by Trump and company will be investigated. But here's the good news, because there are some state officials, some state representatives, some state attorneys general who are stepping up. You know, just as the president, the attorney general, and other federal officers have a responsibility to support the citizens of the United States, every state official has an equal responsibility to support the citizens of their states. That includes the citizens' right to vote in a free and fair election. Here is what has been happening in recent days, and it is encouraging. The Arizona Secretary of State, Katie Hobbs, in the last couple of days, made a criminal referral of Donald Trump and Louis DeJoy to the Arizona State Attorney General. Let me say that one more time, because it feels so good when elected and appointed officials affirmatively and aggressively protect the rights of the people. So I'm going to say it again. The Arizona Secretary of State Katie Hobbs made a criminal referral of Donald Trump and Louis DeJoy to the Arizona State Attorney General. Here's what she tweeted out. In Arizona, it's against the law to delay the delivery of a ballot. I've asked Attorney General Brnovich, to investigate recent changes at the U.S. Postal Service and whether or not the Trump administration has committed a crime. Well, they have committed a crime. They are committing a crime, and they will keep criming by slowing down the mail to interfere with the elections until someone steps up and puts a stop to it. And here we have the first someone who is stepping up and making a criminal referral of Trump and DeJoy because of the crimes they're committing that are interfering with the rights of the citizens of the state of Arizona. This is good news, folks. But there's more. Because there's been a second criminal referral of Donald Trump and Louis DeJoy. This one also in recent days by U.S. Congressman Bill Pascrell Jr. He's a representative from New Jersey, and he made a criminal referral of Donald Trump and Louis DeJoy to the New Jersey State Attorney General, and here's what he said in a tweet. Tonight, I've made a criminal referral to the New Jersey Attorney General asking him to impanel a grand jury to look at subversion of New Jersey election laws by Donald Trump and Louis DeJoy and other Trump officials in their accelerating arson of the post office. He got a little flowery at the end there. Their accelerating arson of the post office. They are trying to burn it all down. No doubt about it. Figuratively speaking, Trump and DeJoy are trying to burn down the post office in advance of the election by making these ridiculous changes, cutting all overtime, pulling sorting machines out. Sorting machines that enable the 2 postal employees to sort 30,000 pieces of mail that without the machine would take about 30 Postal Service employees. Come on, folks. This couldn't be more transparent. And it couldn't be more illegal, I contend. So now we have 2 criminal referrals in 2 states, Arizona and New Jersey. And can I suggest that every state in the country should be doing the same thing? Every state attorney general should be undertaking a criminal investigation of Trump and DeJoy for interfering in the state citizens' rights to participate in free and fair elections. Because it's time. It's time to put a stop to this. It's time to let the American people breathe. You know, Trump's got his knee on our necks. He just does. And we need to breathe. And we need to vote. And we need to be protected. And we need to be represented. So thanks for watching, folks. I'd like to add that we just posted our first long format podcast. The name of the podcast is Justice Matters. And episode 1 is the Trump Crimes Commission, right? I talk about the need to hold Trump and company accountable in a court of law beginning in January. So if you're inclined, please download our podcast and give it a listen. Also, you can always connect with me on Twitter, Glenn Kirshner 2. And finally, we just started a Patreon page. So if you want to go and become a patron, if you want to support our content and our efforts, we would greatly appreciate that. So as always, folks, please stay safe. And I look forward to talking with you all tomorrow.
Senate Republicans, led by Mitch McConnell, have made it 100% crystal clear that they are not going to include aid to states in any forthcoming coronavirus relief package. And the reason for this is because they've said that they do not want any package they put together to be a so-called blue state bailout. Because obviously the narrative Republicans are trying to push is that blue states were so unprepared, they were so horrible with their response, that whatever happened to them economically, they probably deserved it. This, by the way, is not based in reality. Because what we're seeing happen right now is that red states are getting hit even harder, and their economies were far more fragile than those of blue states. So it's actually the red states that are getting screwed over the most from Mitch McConnell's decision here. It's actually not funny. And you know what else isn't funny? The fact that Moody's came out with an analysis this week showing that Mitch McConnell's decision to not provide aid to states here in the United States is going to result in at least being the key word there, a 3% overall shrinking of the U.S. economy and at least 4 million jobs lost. All 100% because of Mitch McConnell's decision. So Mitch McConnell, to put it another way, is about to be single-handedly responsible for causing a massive recession here in the United States because he doesn't want to help blue state governors. Little Turtle Man is so willing to hurt Democrats that he is actually willing to be the one to flush the toilet with the economy inside of it. That's what Mitch McConnell is doing. He's laid this giant turd of an economy, and now he's waving it goodbye as it goes round and round the toilet. This is 100% on Mitch McConnell, folks. He is the leader of the Republicans who are leading the Senate. They are the ones, not the Democrats in the House. It's the Republicans in the Senate who have said we are not giving a dime to states. Red states, blue states, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many cases you have. It doesn't matter what kind of mitigation efforts you engaged in. It doesn't matter if you shut down in the early days or if you reopened after 2 weeks. It doesn't matter. I'll hurt all 50 of you just to hurt one of you, Mitch McConnell says. This, while not criminal by any stretch of the imagination, I think we can either go with sociopathic or full-blown psychotic Mitch McConnell is with this decision. Folks, we're going to hit a recession, a massive recession, bigger than what we're seeing right now because of Mitch McConnell's singular decision here. This is on him. So I hope that these 4 million people, or maybe even more, when you lose your job, Mitch McConnell cost you your job. When the economy shrinks by 3%, just remember, if you have retirement funds out there, those are also going to shrink. Mitch McConnell took that money from you. That's what this means. That's what the analysts are telling us. And that is what Mitch McConnell is proud to be doing to this country.
Thank you for listening to Women of Courage, and have a great day.